Well, hello, Gracers. This is Danny Whitaker, and welcome to my first time at bat here trying to put together the monthly lesson for Grace Art. This is for the month of March for Willow Springs, and our artist, as you can see, is Kollwitz. We debated how that name was pronounced until we got on YouTube and confirmed it. And between my wife and I guessed it right, so I'm not even German. Anyway, so Kata Kollwitz was born in 1867, died in 1945, so you can see that she lived in a really interesting time frame there, covering both world wars and so forth. Might be an interesting thing to point out to the kids. Uh, Born in Lönigsburg, East Prussia, again 1867. She was part of a liberal upper middle class family, was encouraged by her father to follow her artistic pursuits. Uh, Studied art from 1884 to 1889 and was inspired by German artist Max Kingler to become a graphic artist. After 1890, Kollwitz concentrated mostly on the graphic arts, relying on line and tone to convey meaning in her artworks. And that was an underpinning you can point out to the kids in her artwork for her whole lifetime, as you'll see in the slides to come. When she was 17 years old, she met and married Karl Kollwitz, a doctor who provided medical treatments to the poor and oppressed working class in Berlin. Her father attempted to discourage her from marriage, assuring her that she would be unable to maintain her career as an artist while becoming a wife and mother. But she proved him wrong by continuing her artistic career throughout her life. In 1891, she moved with her husband to one of Berlin's working class districts. Here she found inspiration in the working class, documenting their lives and hardships of the poor and oppressed in her work. Kollwitz studied the people that came in to seek medical treatment at her husband's clinic. So I think that's an interesting point for the kids there to point out that rather than marrying uh, her husband, that being a hindrance to her career, she actually worked it into her career as an artist, if you think about it that way. She drew many sketches from observation of the people she saw, and the expressive nature of her drawings captures the relationships and experiences of the working class. So she's showing, you can tell she's showing a very serious interest in the working class, the proletariat. Um, she created extremely expressive artworks that revealed the emotions and experiences of the people in her world. And again, you can point to these illustrations and ask the kids, look at these pictures. How, what do they make the kids feel like? Not just from if you can point out the color, the contrast of it's very stark, black and white and grays, but also look at the physical uh, posturing of the subjects. The man holding his head in his hands, and the woman looking, you know, pensive, not quite brooding, but so Kollwitz created many sketches to perfect her composition and refine the figures and expressions she drew before creating an etching, lithograph, or woodcut. She studied the human figure from observation, using not only the social experiences but also the physical features of people she saw in her daily life as inspiration for her artwork. And she used strong, dark marks to create these images. And, again, point that out to the kids. There's things that look at the hands in these pictures. The one on the left, the mothers in particular. You can point that out. You can see how Kollwitz is, using the human form to express. There's strength, there's love, there's hardship, and everything is expressed, not just in the colors but in the human form. German Expressionism was concerned with the emotional human experience, and this influenced Kollwitz's work directly. She was inspired by the emotionally charged artwork in an exhibit of German Expressionism that she attended in 1910. She began using a more dramatic and stark style in her printmaking, using the strong black and white contrast of woodcuts to illustrate the exaggerated figures in her work. And it's worth noting that once we take a look at project section here, we've got a couple of projects to offer this month. One of them is based on woodcuts, but if you look at it, it's almost like a negative to a photograph. And the good question to ask the kids is how does that affect the way they see that picture? Like this one over here on the right, in particular, the mothers. Kollwitz spent much of her career creating art that told the stories of her country and the struggles of the people she saw and the world around her. In 1893, wow, she didn't live that long. In 1893, she saw the premiere of a play, The Weavers, and was inspired to create a series of etchings entitled A Weaver's Uprising. And you can see it right here. It illustrated the rebellion of traditional Silesian workers against the use of weaving machines and textile mills, causing unfair competition. And again, you consider the time frame in which she lived and did her art. She really is reflecting the time that she lived in, the kind of social uprising that was occurring in Europe at the time. Kollwitz received a gold medal at a major Berlin exhibition for this print series, and the recognition she received garnered her a position teaching drawing and etching at the Berlin School for Women Artists, where she had studied as a teen. Again, every one of these pictures you can see illustrating her use of shade and tone, just the black and white. It's amazing how much she gets out of this with no color. And printmaking allowed Kollwitz to create many images from the same printing surface, making her art readily accessible at low cost. Woodcut prints are created by carving an image into the surface of a wooden block. Areas that are carved remain the white of the paper, and uncarved areas are the dark black color of the printing ink, not unlike a negative to an old-style photograph. And you can ask them what artistic qualities add to the sad feeling of this image. I mean, do you ask the kids, do they think that it adds to the sadness of this picture that the black is white and the white is black? The tonal image of it. And how does the contrast of a woodcut printmaking style help us focus our attention in the artwork? Kollwitz's work after the Russian Revolution, the German Revolution, and the start of World War I leaned more towards social protest. Again, a very socially active woman, and her personal experiences during that time period. Kollwitz was stricken with grief after her youngest son Peter was killed in battle in 1914. She became a pacifist, using her next series of prints to express her sorrow and draw attention to the negative effects of war, and her focus became images of mothers protecting children. And these are wonderful pictures to use this. I mean, ask the kids what these pictures make them feel. She also began working as a sculptor, creating a monument for her son and the other young men who lost their lives during the war. Her drawings and prints were used to express social and political issues in posters during this time, illustrating the dramatic effects of the war on the people of Russia. After the war, Kollwitz became the first woman appointed to a professorship at the Prussian Arts Academy, where she served as the head of the graphic arts studio. Kollwitz taught and worked at the academy from 1928 until 1933. When Hitler came to power in 1933, Kollwitz was forced out of her position at the academy. Her work was banned from exhibiting and was removed from museums. She and her husband were evacuated during bombing raids and were moved to Mortsburg, near Dresden, in order to escape. And I think it may not even be a point of art here, but I think it's worth pointing out the historic backdrop to the kids. That First World War, the Second World War. I mean, all the upheaval that was happening during, and the way Kollwitz's work reflected that. During her lifetime, Kate Kollwitz created over 50 self-portraits. Her self-portraits stood out for their emotionally expressive nature and a realistic rather than idealistic depiction of her own face. Bombing destroyed Kollwitz's home and studio, and very little of her work survived. Kollwitz died on April 22, 1945, just before the end of World War II. Her work is considered revolutionary for its honest depiction of the more traumatic experiences of the working class and the rich quality of her emotionally charged imagery. So, really, it's, as I've said, it's really, she's a great example of art reflecting life. So I hope I did okay with my first step up to the plate, and stick around and we'll have some options for projects.